the continuation of the Common Council for August 19th. The next item up was the 240803, and that is going to be pulled tonight because it is not correctly, there's some scrivener's errors there. Is that the right term? We'll have to rewrite that and bring it back. So without objection, I'm going to pull that. Okay. Up next is file number 240810. Resolution from Finance approved 5-0, authorizing the issuance and sale of up to $1,048,735 in water system revenue bonds, Series 2024B, and providing for other details and covenants with respect thereto. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion from Watson, second from Henke. Comments, questions?
Okay. You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. Up next, file number 240813. This came from Public Health and Safety on a 4-to-1 measure and HR on a 3-to-2 measure. Joint resolution recommending approval of the proposed restructuring of the animal control program within the Wausau Police Department. Motion from Lukens, second from Rasmussen and Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I just want to recap a little bit of kind of how we got to this point. Finance, last term, directed the police department to conduct a wholesale review of this program as far as what they do and how they do it. When Everest Metro PD, pending their police merger, decided to opt out of a renewal of the contract. And so before we agreed to add any more money to the program, we wanted them to take a look at that program and determine if that mode of service delivery was productive and efficient and the way we want it to be done, and then contemplating that loss of revenue, see if any changes needed to be made. So we directed, this is not, we actually directed the police department to take a look at this operation and bring back to us recommendations that they felt were reasonable to be able to not only address the revenue loss, but address the service and the way we provide the service. The result of that review was the plan that we have in front of us. And what this plan really is about, or the change is about, is it's about service delivery to the community. What plan gets the best level of service to the community at the best, at times when they need it. And the situation that we have is, and we've all talked about the fact that designing a program of this scale around one person, when those hours are restricted and the days are restricted, isn't necessarily placing services out in the community at times when people are needing the services. Part of the reason I would suspect that Everest Metro withdrew from their contract is because they were not receiving the services that they had believed that they were contributing to the pool for. That said, there was also some talk of the fact that the program that originally had a design for, one full-time officer and a couple of CSOs was never staffed as designed. I am here to tell you that I was here for the design and the rollout of that plan. And that plan is a direct result of a task force that we had put in place to address all sorts of things with animal control. In fact, that task force is what brought Alder McElhaney to public service. She was one of the citizen members of that panel. And we took a look at all things humane, licensing compliance and response to calls and the service that was happening out in the community. And at the time, District 6 was represented by Keen Winters. He chaired that committee and helped craft a plan to staff WASA's first in-house humane officer. Prior to that, a decade or two before, there was a humane officer, but that person worked for the Humane Society. And so he set to work crafting that plan with the work of that task force. But the original concept for that plan wasn't a Wausau-only plan. His plan was to roll that out regionally to a whole bunch of communities, not just to serve us and not just to serve Everest Metro. And so as an alder, as part of that task force, he set about selling that plan to all kinds of communities. He went down to the Marathon County Board and he presented that plan. He went out to some small townships and started presenting that plan to solicit support and feedback and contributions, including asking Marathon County to help fund the first vehicle. At that point, he was reined in by the city attorney, who is our current city attorney, who had said to him, "Stop. You are way beyond the scope of your authority as an individual alder. You have not been authorized by any government body to go out and sell anything to anybody for any price." And so he stopped. And then he went out, marched down to the police department, and he had a meeting with former Chief Hardell. And he wanted Chief Hardell then to go around and sell that program as a staff person. And Chief Hardell's answer was no. We need to walk before we can run. And let's try it with two departments first, Everest Metro and Wausau, and see if we can get this to work so we can serve two communities. And at that point, if it works and it's really productive and other communities wish to partake and camp on, we could talk about that in the future. But you don't start something out in 5 or 6 communities, some of whom were rural, on day one. And so we emerged out of all of that discussion, and there was some teeth pulling. We emerged from that discussion with the program that we have. And we funded it. It was created as an enterprise fund. It was supposed to be self-sustaining. The money from fines and forfeitures was to go back into the animal control plan. And it was kind of to be run like a little business and become self-sustaining. And in the early year, I would say, first year or two, we were on track for that. Enforcement was better. We were getting data from veterinarians as far as when rabies vaccines were given. We had lists of people that we could contact and say, you've licensed your pet now, or you've vaccinated your pet, now it's time to get your license. When licensing was late, we had someone who was going to be tasked with going out and knocking on the door and saying, hey, do you still have your animal? Now is the time for licensing. And that person also had citation power to cite those individuals when that wasn't complied with. There was a time way back to Clerk Rayala that they were already having troubles in the clerk's office with the enforcement arm of the licensing compliance. That was a significant fund source to fund that program. And so that program then continued to rely on the general fund for support when it was originally touted as a plan that would eventually become self-sustaining and be able to pay for itself, largely based on fines and forfeitures from bad owner behaviors. So, this is not something that was intentionally underfunded, understaffed, set up to fail, and all of this. It was never that. What we need, though, is we need a plan that delivers effective service to the community, but yet we also have to think about what we get with an expansion of this program. And I just feel like an expansion of this program does not necessarily improve service to the community. I think that the program as restructured would put people on the job to respond to calls at different times of the day and different times of the week. When service is needed, we'd be able to meet that need within the confines of the funding we already have. We wouldn't need to expand funding. And I think that we could get good results with that. There's already been talk about training those CSOs and giving them the appropriate state humane training. And I really think that we should try this. I think that the plan that Officer Bishop referred to, that she had sent to all of us individually, outlining a new plan for expansion and things, there's a lot of things in that plan that were not taken into account. And I think that plan comes to us somewhat inappropriately. I think that we set ourselves on a slippery slope. There's a chain of command that exists within our organization and within our departments. And, when you have an idea to totally redesign something, that begins with your supervisor and feeds its way up the chain to get through committees and get studied. And you don't do an end runaround on your managers and carry that plan to 11 council members by email. I think that we set ourselves up on a slippery slope, that if we were to even start to consider something like that, every time someone in the workforce is mad at their manager, we can expect a call and an email, and that is not how this should be done. So I would like to see us, we ask them to do a significant amount of research on how to get service delivered to this community efficiently. And I think that the plan we have in front of us is that. I think we need to move forward as recommended and restructure the program and give that restructuring a chance. Because I think that, one thing that we have to do when we make any decisions that are HR-based is the names and the faces have to come out of it, and we have to be objective. And that is anything from policy enforcement to handbook writing to reclassifications, all of it. All of those things that happen in the HR committee, you need to look at the job description, and the service model, and keep the people out of it. We cannot make an emotional decision. And we can't make a decision to expand a program and pour more money down it because we feel sorry for someone. So I'm sorry I have to say that, but we've had these discussions in public health and safety. We've had these discussions in HR, and I feel like the plan we were presented with is an effective way to get service out to the community without expending additional resources. So thank you.
Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not comfortable with the choices that are in front of us. I don't see where, replacing a seasoned employee who's got 10, 11 years' experience helping, helping animals and stuff. I don't see where we're gaining anything by just letting her go and replacing her with, pardon me, it said we had talked about 3 SOs, but here in the whereas, it says the proposed model is to use part-time non-sworn-in officers. So it doesn't.
That's a CSO.
Yeah, I understand that, but it doesn't say how many. So I'm not comfortable with this. I think that, that perhaps the police department's going to get pissed at me for saying this, but I think there's some internal problems there that they're trying to shove off on the council. I think if there's, I'm going to use another example. I would say that what's going to happen, say 3 months down the line, all of a sudden we have lieutenant that for some reason they want to get rid of, and all of a sudden they can say, well, you know what, I can replace this lieutenant, and we can do it with 3 CSOs, and we can give them 40 hours training, and we can save we can save the city a whole ton of money. That too is going down a slippery slope. It's going down a slippery slope when you're talking about letting go a seasoned employee. I think there's internal problems there. I think the internal problems need to be worked out internally. I also.
That's speculation.
Pardon me, I have the floor, sir. I'd like to make an amendment to this proposal, if I could. I've sat and I've spoke with Attorney Ann Jacobson about this morning. I would like to,
Can you press your amend button on your,
thank you.
thank you.
It's not working. There it goes. I would like to amend this proposal, and where it says, whereas the proposed model to use part-time, non-sworn-in employees allowed for 60 hours per week animal control services, which would include evening and weekend shifts. I would like to replace that with whereas a proposed model to use one full-time humane officer, 2 currently employed non-sworn-in officers for a period of 1 year. I would like to see this go on for a year. I would like to see then the data come back to us. I see a lot of potential here, and then other whereases, you'd have to take out the fact where it's budget neutral. You'd have to take that out of that whereas. You'd have to take the whereas out of the employee termination, and you would also have to change the be it resolved to 1 full-time humane officer and 2 part-time employees to provide 60 hours of service.
Do you have that?
So we have an amendment. Do you want them to reread that, or you want to read that back?
I didn't capture all the adjustments based on your amendment, but to amend the item to change.
Well, and I'd also, however you would want to put it, Madam Clerk, I'd like to have the police department come back to us with, after 1 year of using this model here, and see if we're getting any, give us the data. And I think if, for those, I'm just as money conscious as you, all you know, I'm just as money conscious as the next person here. But I just don't see where, you're saving any money here by getting rid of an experienced employee when they're,
Okay, so we have an amendment. We'll need to get a second, so stand by till we get the amendment, if you would.
So to amend to change the seventh whereas clause to read 1 full-time humane officer and 2 currently employed non-sworn officers for 1 year time, and then review data after that.
correct. And you can also leave the 60 hours on, and then the whereas down below, where you'll have to take out, where it's budget neutral and employee termination. You would also have to take out the be it resolved.
Okay, so amend item 0813, to change the seventh whereas clause to read 1 full-time humane officer and 2 currently employed non-sworn officers for 1 year, and then review data, as well as remove the budget neutral clause in the 10th whereas clause and remove the now therefore be it resolved clause.
Correct.
All right, so we have an amendment,
There's a motion by Larson.
a motion by Larson. And we have a second by Tierney. So this discussion is on the amendment. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just a clarification, if this is not budget neutral, then we would have to send this also to finance for budget mod to pay for this? Because I thought we were out of funding for October.
Well, it certainly would require a 2/3 vote if we're making an amendment, a budget mod at this point.
I mean, it's probably a future action because it's not, there's no budget mod listed in here, but to pay for this, they'd have to take it up in finance and find the money, right?
Yes, I mean, I can't say for certain that this is going to cost more because I haven't analyzed it, but.
Right. But
we
if
can
it
look at
does.
that, right.
If it does, okay, thank you.
Alder Martins.
Yep. I'm going to speak to the amendment here, and I have a problem with this, and Alder Rasmussen just brought, what Alder Rasmussen just brought up, and that's the fiscal impact that this amendment would have by keeping a full-time humane officer and adding 2 non-sworn CSOs for up to 60 hours. We're in effect doubling the budget for these 3 positions for the department that is looking for in 2025 to try to stay as budget neutral as possible. I don't think this is fiscally responsible. I think this is just, this is kind of an off-the-cuff sort of thing that it just doesn't, it doesn't, on a budgetary standpoint, it doesn't play well, but I fail to see the the benefit of this in trying to squeeze, you know, these extra staff into the department where there may or may not be the money. So I'm not going to support this.
Well, just to answer your question, it does not have to go back to finance. The council can do whatever it wants here, but if you have to understand, if this is not budget neutral, it will require 2/3. Go ahead, Ann.
I'd also like to add, that unless I misheard, didn't Alder Larson say currently employed
I did.
CSOs?
I did. So you're not adding any extra employees. May I add something else?
Stand by.
Okay.
Look, the budget, it would be a budget mod because we would then have to come up with the additional funding that we were short, and maybe the chief could discuss that.
Well, I can't give you down to the penny, but I can tell you when we reach this point in time in the year, our budget for CSOs is usually exhausted. I know that that's where ours is right now. There's a couple $1,000s left in the animal control budget that's allocated towards CSOs, which it has always been. But if the expectation is to employ 2 people for anywhere between 10 and 20 hours a week through the remainder of the year, there isn't budget to modify in the CSO budget at this point. We generally lose our CSOs at about the start of college at the end of August, and we're quickly approaching that.
Alder Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And when I also say, you know, when it comes to a full-time employee, my wife, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be 40 hours. You know, my wife worked full-time 32 hours. So, I mean, there's different ways to make this work. I mean, but I just don't, and like, just adding to what I said, we're not adding any employees here. We're taking off our current CSO list. So, thank you.
Alder Killian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have actually several points I'd like to make. I listened to Alder Rasmussen, and maybe she feels that wanting to maintain the humane officer is out of sympathy. I disagree strongly. We had a human resource meeting, and I'm going to go through this. It'll take a little bit, but I think it's important in this issue. We had a human resource meeting, our first one in this regard, and we were presented with a very nice presentation from the police department and from our assistant attorney and from our city clerk. And it was tabled because we requested more information. We came back to HR, and I was concerned after the first meeting because all we were presented with was one perspective of a situation that has 2 sides, okay? We were given the perspective from the police department, but my concern was that we had no feedback from the people who take care of animals, okay? So I took it upon myself to call veterinarians, veterinarian techs, and veterinarian clinic managers, and they overwhelmingly said that they are very aware of the humane officer position in the city of Wausau, and they felt that it had assisted them in animal care throughout the whole time that she was there. So my perspective is that, they also indicated to me that they did not feel that CSOs with 40 hours of training and continuing education were going to be able to do the job that the humane officer with some assistance would do. I then, I think it was, I can't remember the date. I've got it written down here. I received a phone call. Hang on a minute. On July 31st, I received a telephone call from Catherine Callie Schroep, who was a law clerk with the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and she's a 30-year board-certified veterinary internal medicine specialist. The ALDF is a national nonprofit institution dedicated to animal welfare. She told me the purpose of her phone call and asked if she could email to me some specific information related to the proposal regarding the elimination of the humane officer in Wausau. I told her I would be happy to receive that email. Katie said that they had been made aware of the situation in Wausau and had done very thorough research in this regard. They reviewed our humane officer position since its inception in 2012 and 2013 and have followed all meetings and information regarding the issue. She asked me to email the information which she sent to me to all council members, the mayor, and the HR director, which I did do, and which is included in the packet. The ALDF, without reservation, indicated that the humane officer position must be maintained because a position such as this is critical for animal welfare. They indicated that off times of the humane officer could be supplemented with CSOs, and the humane officer would mentor them. She also addressed in the information she sent to me ways that the city could achieve funding to make up for the $16,000 shortfall. They also expressed that our city should be very proud of itself because they identified the necessity for such a program and had already invested a great deal of time and money in the program. Okay, so that's the opinion of not only local experts who are involved with animal care, but that is the expert opinion of a national foundation that knows about animal welfare everywhere. And the fact that our CSO's officers from 8 to 4:30 have become such an issue, you know, the way the city finds money for so many things, I think we can find some money to make up for that small shortfall. I mean, $16,000 is a lot of money, but animal care and the people who maintain those animals are critical issues with our city. And I think that it is up to us to maintain someone that is an expert, that has knowledge and that has experience, and let her mentor the people who are going to assist her. I just feel like we can't ignore the opinion of expert people, not only locally but nationally. I think it behooves us to take that very seriously, and I will not support eliminating that position.
Thank you. As a reminder, we're discussing the amendment. Alder Larson.
I didn't have my name up, it just never got taken off.
Okay, Alder Watson.
I was wondering if it's possible to get like budget impact, if we would we have to table it or come back to get those accurate numbers? Because can we vote on it if it is gonna budget mod? Like you were discussing something about that, Mayor.
We would have to determine if this is considered a budget mod, and if so, it would require 2/3. If not, then we would hold the budget the same, and the chief would have to work through that. It's up to this body, but that's the way I'm reading it.
So we would,
and I
we
would-
would be able to act on this tonight then, even if it's
Certainly,
not
the
budget
council
neutral?
can do anything it wants. The question is, how are you going to pay for it? Or if you're not going to pay for it, how are you going to hold them to that amount? And
Okay.
I'll defer to the parliamentarian, but I'm reading it, again, we can do what we want.
Yes, I think you could approve it tonight, but then some study's going to have to be done to see if a budget modification is required, which would then need to come back to finance, and then a 2/3 vote on the budget modification itself, not on this proposed measure, to make sure that you could fund and implement what you passed. Or you could wait, defer it, as Mary Ann said, do the investigation, and then bring it back together, knowing that you've got a budgetary impact and vote on them together.
Okay. I did have something else and I totally forgot. I think one concern I have about the whereas too, did you also eliminate the part that the program would be ended from October to January? Like, it sounds like we're not going to have a program for 2 months of the year just because there wasn't funding for it. So then would the humane officer, based on this amendment, would they remain employed for the rest of the year then?
I think the intention behind that is the program would not exist for those months from a budgetary standpoint, but those calls for service would just be handled by the police department staff, which is consistent with what they're doing currently.
I guess my one concern was I don't know how aware people were that the program would sort of be ended for a couple months. I mean, I really value the humane officer. I love my fur babies, so it's very important to have somebody knowledgeable and skillful out there. And so, not that I don't think the patrol officers do a great job. I gave them a couple leashes once when I helped them with the stray, but I think it's important to have that service throughout the entire year. So I don't know. I'm a little hesitant about supporting this.
I mean, the council's going to decide whatever. You're the policymakers. You're going to make policy for the city. I don't stand here without background or understanding and my confidence to tell you that the average citizen in Wausau wouldn't notice a difference from the last year. Our officers and CSOs have been handling all animal-related calls for all of 2025, and we haven't received calls. I'm sorry, 2024. I was close, within a year. And we have found it to be satisfactory. We haven't received complaints from individuals. The community hasn't been reaching out to us telling us that we're missing the boat. So to not have a program in place, it would be consistent with the entire year's service that have been provided from that context. And I think you can see some data that was updated and provided by Captain Seiler regarding the last 3 months as far as calls for service, who's handled those calls, citations, and the data that's important to us from an animal control perspective.
Thank you, Alder Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we do need somebody in place to be a humane officer. Now, it seems to me that there is a departmental problem with the humane officer that we currently have in place, and the situation inside that department. And that is not for the city council to be involved in. That is between the humane officer and her manager to get that situation resolved. But I think that if we can find over $200,000 to put a decorative fence around the parking, we can find $16,000 for this humane officer in the budget. Thank you.
Alder Killian.
I have a question for Chief Barnes. Chief Barnes, do I remember correctly that when you did the presentation, now we just talked about not having a program for a couple of months. When you did the presentation, did you tell us that, I'm trying to recall, that the CSOs would have that humane certification within 1 year? Was that the time frame?
Well, I'm going to do my best to, this is the 5th meeting on this issue, so
Yeah.
I'll use that as my excuse if I misspeak. And I wasn't the one presenting in those,
Well,
but
that's
I
right,
would
you
tell
weren't.
you
I'm
that
sorry.
we currently have 2 sworn officers that have expressed interest in our schedule to go to the humane officer training this year, and then we would get any CSOs that were assigned to code enforcement through that training, as well as training. I think there's a misconception, at least through my lens, when we use the word humane officer. It is a certification. It is a certification that Ashley Bishop has. It is a certification that another one of our patrol officers has achieved. It's a certification that the director of the Humane Society that works with us has achieved. There's multiple sheriff's deputies with that certification. So access to that knowledge and information, should we need it, is very much available to us. It's not something that we would have to go outside the county or outside our normal partners to receive. If a case came up or a situation came up that we didn't feel competent to investigate or to make decisions on. So that exists for us right now. I think the plan you heard from Captain Seiler discusses a much more robust expansion of that programming over time as we would get people in those positions.
And I trust that if you didn't feel competent to do it, you would let somebody know. But I think there's more to this decision than just a certification. I think there are years of experience. There's expertise that develops, and I think it involves a lot more than just a certification and people showing an interest. I personally have received a lot of feedback about this proposal, and I have not heard from one person that they think the police couldn't do a job, that they couldn't handle a call, but they also have told me that they believe that, and again, from the experts in the city, that the humane officer is a critical part of their animal care. So I can only trust those people who have taken care of animals and know animals, and I'm not doubting for one moment that the police department hasn't done a remarkable job. So
I would just ask you to consider the fact, or at least recognize the fact, that the police department's been providing animal control for as long as there's been a police department. So there are a tremendous amount of years of experience responding to those type of calls by our staff on a daily basis. So that experience also exists within our department.
So you feel it's equal to that of a person who specializes?
I feel that when there's always value in people's expertise and experiences. We have an incredibly diverse background of our staff at the Wausau Police Department. But I will tell you, every single police officer starts out the exact same way. Terrified, excited, and willing to learn and develop those skills. If all we were going to do as we changed programs or built things at the police department was expect to be able to find people that show up with 10 years, 15 years of experience, we'd have a very difficult time filling positions. So what I am confident in is the leadership at the police department, the training that's available, and our partners locally in the area who we spend a tremendous amount of time collaborating with to be able to provide excellent service to your constituents. I believe we can do that.
And I'm not doubting that you do. I just happen to feel very strongly that we have a lot of experience already, and I don't know that there's a need to continue trying to build and start from ground zero. So that's just my personal opinion, and thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so Alder Lukens would like to speak.
Thank you. My app isn't working. So I guess what I would like to see if, I mean, I like the idea. I like Alder Larson's idea of looking at, is there some way to do it both and? But I'm not comfortable on, I would prefer to vote on something that I can see written out, if we're going to do an amendment, to table it or to see if there is any other, I just feel like it's such a controversial issue. in the community and here, and I believe it's also definitely about, it's position, right? It's position, not person. So I think that's really important for everyone to keep in mind. It's to, what is going to serve best in our community. So I guess I'm torn in that way, because we know funding is important, budget's important, but I would prefer to, if we're going to, depending upon where alders land on this, to, rather than vote on actually passing something tonight, if we are interested in an amendment, I'd like to see it first before we vote on it. So then I would want to table it until the next meeting or something. Thank you.
So I have a motion to table from Alder Lukens.
To the next council meeting?
To the next council meeting, which would be September 10th.
Point of inquiry, are we tabling the motion or the amendment or the resolution?
They're all in on the parliamentarian, but we are tabling the amendment, which puts us into a little conundrum.
So
The
you wanna
issue
take
here
that
is
back
going to
then?
be, to expound on her point, if this is a budget modification, it would require a 2/3 vote. We haven't determined whether that is or not, so it does make some sense to understand what the context of the budget impact is, unless the finance director can spin something up in the next 1 minute. But okay.
Obviously, Matt has said that he's out of money. I believe him. So it looks like he would need a budget mod. But I don't know that. I haven't looked at the numbers. I wasn't prepared to talk about that tonight, unfortunately.
So if we were to vote on it, then it would require 2/3 tonight with a budget mod.
Right.
If we were to table it and understand what that is, that would be another option.
Yep.
So parliamentarian, help us out. If we table this amendment, does it table the entire item?
Could you take it back and vote on the amendment?
That's what I was thinking, is maybe the folks that made the motion, the second to amend it, agree to withdraw their motion to amend, and then we've got the main resolution back on the floor, and then someone can make a motion to postpone the item to the next council meeting.
Or we could vote.
With the
amendment, or
direction
we-
maybe to prepare whatever budget impact they think the proposed amendment would bring. No, ask whoever made the motion in the second if they'd withdraw their motion to amend.
Okay, if that's parliamentary acceptable, the motion was by Larson and second by Tierney.
I will not withdraw my motion. I will not withdraw my amendment.
Okay? So we have a motion and a second. We can pass the motion or the amendment. We can vote on the amendment, and then we can vote to table?
Yes, I think you can vote on the amendment, but it's not going to be implemented if it's not properly budgeted for. I mean, we have an unknown budgetary impact right now, so we're at a place now where we need to vote on the amendment.
Okay. So motion to table, does that not override any other motion?
Motion to postpone.
I thought you had a question.
Yeah, that's a main one. That's a main motion.
Says it a privilege
Postpone
motion.
consideration, yep, privilege motion. Listed in order of precedence, when any of them is pending, you may not introduce one listed below. So you've got. Okay, so the postponement takes precedence over an amendment. So you can, so he's moved to amend it, now somebody's moved to postpone it or refer it to the next council meeting, which takes precedence over the motion to amend, actually. So we don't need to withdraw it, right? So we got a motion, yeah. Do we have a motion to postpone it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alder Lukens.
We haven't taken a second yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so parliamentarian, you can, we just took a minute here to refer to Robert's rules, and it appears the parliamentarian has an answer.
All right, so among the privileged motions, the motion to amend was on the floor with a second, followed by discussion, and then a motion was made to postpone the matter to the next council meeting, which takes precedence over the motion to amend. So while the motion to amend is pending, you can't introduce another motion that's beneath that, but the motion to postpone it to a future meeting takes precedence over the motion to amend. So did we get a second on the motion to
We are
refer
awaiting
to
a
the next
second.
council? Okay.
We have a motion to table from Alder Lukens, and we're looking for a second. Is this real?
Yeah.
And we have a second from Alder Watson.
Is this real? I love it. Okay.
So now that the motion to table is not debatable, and it's motion to table to September 10th.
It is debatable.
It is debatable.
Yes.
I stand corrected. All right. So we have a motion to table from Lukens, second by Watson. Any discussion? Question from Gisselman.
Is there a difference between a motion to postpone as opposed to table?
It's the same thing. It's frequently miscalled a motion to table. That word is not used anywhere in Robert's rules. It's a motion to postpone or refer the matter
To a
later.
specific date.
Well, indefinitely, or to a specific date, or to a specific meeting, or the next meeting of a certain body, whenever that might occur, so
Okay,
on and so forth.
That was, so the correct parliamentary would be to postpone rather than using the term to table. Thank you.
Yes.
Postpone to a date certain, September 10th. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just a question. The only thing that we're uncertain on with this is the money, right? So, I mean, if that's what we're figuring out for September 10th is the money part. Because if we heard that we have no CSO budget left or almost none, and we knew already that we were out of funding for the full-time position as of October, anything we decide here short of budget neutral is a budget mod. So we may as well plan that when this is coming back, it either is going to have to appear on the finance agenda that same day for whatever is necessary for the money, so we don't need to go back yet again to committee. Like, we may as well plan to put it right in the committee the same time then, if
Yeah.
that's what's going to have to happen.
We have a finance on August 27th, so we could do
Okay,
it on that
there we
day.
go. Thanks.
Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm assuming is if this postponement passes, would my amendment still be on the next council agenda?
Yes, we would pick it back up at that point, and that, after coming back from finance, it would determine whether that's a budget neutral, a budget mod, or a budget reduction of some sort. So that would then tell us what we need to, what the vote, whether it's a 2/3 vote or a simple majority vote.
Okay, and so the vote we're taking tonight would be, right now, is to postpone it.
Postpone until September 10th council, but in between, we'll have a finance meeting the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
Further comment, questions? More tricks for the parliamentarian. All right, seeing none,
You may begin voting on the motion to postpone item 240813. Motion passes 8-2.
thank you, and we will see that again. We have a few more items. Up next, how's everyone doing? Do we need a a bio recess, or are we good? Keep going? All right. File number 231109S from Finance approved 5-0. Resolution approving 2024 budget modification for hot mix to complete additional milling and overlay street maintenance. And this, if you remember, is the snow savings that we had this winter, and we're putting into from salt to asphalt. And I have a motion from Watson, second by Rasmussen. Any comments? Seeing none.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Up next, file number 231109T. Resolution from Finance approving the 2024 budget modifications, general fund balance transfer for purchase of meters, and that was approved in Finance 5-0. Have a motion from Watson, second by Hanky. Comments, questions, seeing, Rasmussen, Alder Rasmussen.
Question, thank you. So are we confident that with this investment that we have the staff manpower to get this job done? I mean, I know that they've gotten behind on the replacements and they were replacing them as they were able to in terms of hours, but are we confident that we can, I thought it was about more than just the money. Do we have the bandwidth and the staff to get them done?
I think we do. We need the meters.
Well, for sure. And what I heard is that once everyone's on the same type of meter, monthly billing becomes an option. So that's another thing that's been delayed by this whole thing, that, when you have multiple different types of meters in service, that was one of the roadblocks to monthly billing, I thought. So can this job get done, I guess? I mean, we can throw $1 million at it, but are we gonna, how fast can we make headway?
Mr. Boers.
We are going to do our best. That is what I will promise you. I'm estimating anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 meters per year. The problem we're running into now is meters are 4 to 5 months out. The radios that attach to those meters are anywhere from 12 to 16 months out. So if we don't have a economic obligation to a vendor to purchase those now, we're not going to get them. We
Okay.
might as well write 2025 off.
Okay. Similar to ordering cars early, I get it. So, yeah, all right, that works. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Getting there. Up next is we have to suspend the rule, and this is going to be suspending, did I miss one? No.
Nope.
Suspend Rule 1D, as in Delta, transmission of committee business. That requires a 2/3 vote. It's not debatable. Motion from Watson, second by Rasmussen.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
All right, so up next then, file 240108 from Public Health and Safety, resolution approving various licenses as indicated, with one denial that we had a gentleman speak to earlier, and it appears that he has left. I would take a motion. I have a motion from Watson, second by Hanky. Alder Larson.
Yeah, that fellow that addressed us earlier, he's not here, but, he has to understand that we as a Public Health and Safety Committee, we have guidelines and stuff that we need to follow, to protect the citizens of this community. And if he's got any pending charges or any charges against him, I would have to say that, until he either comes clean from these charges that are against him, I would have to say that we would just have to continue to not allow him to have his license until he can prove to the committee that he's been rehabilitated or his charges have been dropped. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. That was my comment also. He has the option to reapply And if he has evidence of rehabilitation at that time, or if the court charges have come to fruition and then been settled one way or the other, and he has feedback about how that ended, the committee would accept an application from him anytime. So the denial tonight is a denial tonight, but that doesn't stop him or impose any sort of waiting period with which he could reapply.
Alder Neal.
Thank you. This kind of strikes me as sort of guilty until proven innocent rather than the other way around. And I don't know what our public health and safety guidelines strictly say about such a case, but to me, being accused of something is not being convicted of it. And if a person has a license and then is found guilty, well, can it not be rescinded? But why would it not be granted on the off chance that they might be found guilty? So I don't, that logic doesn't fit with my kind of understanding of American justice. So there you go. I would have advocated for the young man if he had stayed.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. To clarify, the committee has set criteria that it has to use. We have to follow state law. That state law a couple of years ago was changed to enable people greater possibility to obtain work. The thing with the license he applied for is it's a server license, which is what you have to sell retail or in a tavern. There is no distinction that can be imposed on the license for retail only versus full server. And so we have asked for that. Alder McElhaney even asked Pat Snyder to advocate down in Madison for those licenses to be split and either allow a local municipality the freedom to impose a retail-only restriction on a license or to create a retail-only license that we can give people in this scenario. The license that we have to give him today, there's only one type of license. He can take that and work in a tavern or he can work in a convenience store. And the amount of control that gives a person imposes then a different standard of care for responsibility. So the conduit by which people can now submit evidence of rehabilitation to the committee for consideration, when that's properly done, that often has caused denials to be reversed and people have gotten their license. And so he does need to play that out. And if he has documentation to submit, the clerk will accept it and we'll take him back in the committee with a reapplication. So we can't, though, there's certain offenses that are exempt offenses. There's other offenses that cause people to be unable to even possess such a license. And so we have to follow that criteria, which the committee did follow. He did not appear to appeal at the time. And so, if he wishes to bring in evidence and appeal, he's welcome to do that at any one of our monthly meetings, and he can apply to the clerk anytime, so.
Okay, could I just follow up on that, please?
Sure. So let me clarify. I think I heard you say he was not at Public Health and Safety. I didn't view.
He was not there
Health and
tonight, no.
Safety. Okay. Go ahead.
I think he said something like he wasn't able to or whatever. He was here. Again, my feeling is the word rehabilitation or rehabilitate means that something has been proven and is a problem and had to be overcome. And until, the justice system gets to that point where that has been determined that there was a crime and the person was guilty, then sure. But being accused is not being convicted. And I hope that it's not part of, standard operating procedure for public health and safety, that anybody who's been accused of something is therefore not able to get a license. So otherwise, having not been yet, maybe, convicted of anything, that dual license, is there any other reason why he would not be able to work at a tavern or something?
He can work there today, he just can't work alone, unsupervised, in control of the establishment. So anybody you don't need a bartender license to work in those places unless you wish to work by yourself.
Sure, but having one might up your value to the management.
Potentially.
I just, I don't want to belabor this, and I know it's getting late, but if he comes back and seeks, a repeal of the denial, I really hope that the assumption of guilt is not part of any decision-making. It just can't be, because somebody who's been accused I'll say it again, doesn't mean that they've been found guilty. And I think we need to make sure that's part of our criteria. You can always pull it back, but I don't think you should block it on, the thought that maybe. So that's my thoughts on it.
We do have the option of pulling, if that's what you're looking to do, and vote on that separately. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know all of the guidelines that Alder Rasmussen knows. She's much more privy to that kind of information than I am, but I do want to reinforce Alder Neal's feelings that someone is innocent until proven guilty, and I hope that doesn't become a part of our guideline either. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a clarification. The gentleman was told he didn't need to be here at this point in time, and that's why they left. So his mother asked if they needed to stay, and they were told they did not. So I don't want anybody to think that he didn't care about the outcome of this. That's all.
And I would add that, this unfortunate circumstance of the meetings tonight, to put somebody here for 4 hours to see an outcome is unfortunate. It doesn't always work that way, but it happened tonight.
I would hope, Mr. Mayor, I would just hope perhaps because he was not here to hear what we've been saying, that the city at least pay for a stamp and send him a letter and tell him what was said here, and that he is free to go back, to appeal his denial. And I hope that the committee will take into account like my thoughts and maybe anybody else's that has the same feeling.
Thank you. Alder Hanke.
Thank you. I was on public health and safety the last 2 years, and if anyone showed up to fight a ruling, most of the time they didn't know the correct information, and we would always give them the next month, at least to come back and collect the information. So I'd like to move to pull whoever that was.
Mr. Rojas.
Yes, and refer him back to public health and safety, and then maybe get him more information on what he needs to bring documents-wise to that.
Well, but maybe I would suggest we pull him from the list of licenses
Yes.
approval, and
Yes.
we take that.
Yes. It's not working, sorry.
I'll
No,
second,
it-
I'll
it-
second that motion to refer him back. You can pull him from the batch and refer him to public health and safety for next month. I'll second
Okay.
that.
Okay, so
We'll
we
take
have.
it back.
All right, so we have a motion to pull the one denial and a second. Do we need to vote that separately? Can we? Okay, so the recommendation is to pull the one denial and return to public health and safety, give him another chance to defend himself, and pass or deny as the rest of them are listed in the license as indicated. And we still have a motion and a second with that one amendment from Hanke. And Hanke's still listed to speak. Are you done?
No, I'm just finishing the,
Stand by. We're
Yes, I am all done speaking.
Mavis Bacon over here.
So we're just voting on this once?
yeah, so the item is to, it's a motion to remove the Betts Rojas denial and send it back to public health and safety and approve the remaining licenses as indicated.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah. Good. Okay, you may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Public comment and suggestions. Mr. Killian.
Thank you, Tom Killian, 133 East Thomas Street. I'd just like to say that I think Alder Larson's amendment tonight makes a lot of sense, and I think there's huge value in someone being able to take kind of divergent positions and to meld them into one in a way that serves a greater utility. So I think well done, Alder Larson. That being said, I'm intimately familiar with kind of the political machine of Wausau, and I know between now and the meeting in September, there could be, just attempts by the kind of as a city hall special to poke as many holes as possible in that. That would be kind of routine for the power machine. But so I wanted to put out early on that if it's not disingenuous, the financial component, and that really is the sincere concern, that there's just a huge amount of ARPA funding over the last several months that the city's practically tried to throw everything against the wall just to be able to spend it in time. In fact, the police department itself requested $50K for sit-stand desks. So that got a low score, I believe, but it just shows what the police department itself is willing to request with an ARPA funding request. So if it's just about money with ARPA, that should be a slam dunk. It would have to go to finance for scoring, but if that truly is the reason and not disingenuous, and I'm not sure which it would be, that should be a slam dunk with the amount of ARPA funds that the city has left over and some of kind of the bogus ideas it's already put on the table to spend it. So thank you, Alder Larson. I think that's a great idea, and it sounds very financially feasible. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments or suggestions? It's 1 minute after 10. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Hang on, we have another.
Sorry,
Hang fire.
just a quick one. I was just point of order, if the last thing that you guys passed to table the Betts Row House, if that also passed the other licenses, or if that was still a thing to come. Oh, okay. Cheers. Thank you.
He's opening a new business. He's one of the licenses that were indicated.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Cheers, yeah.
If it was listed as a recommended approval, it passed. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, now we'll take that motion to adjourn.
You have a motion.
Okay, from Watson and Larson. All in favor? Aye. See you later.
Aye.